Hello again, everybody. I'm Roger Hoover. Glad to welcome you back to the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Roll Tide, and welcome to this Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota. Make sure you check them out online at TuscaloosaToyota.com, as we're excited for our second show here in 2022 as we keep getting ready for what's coming up on Monday night as Alabama plays Georgia in the national championship game from Indianapolis. We'll start to go through our headlines for today, thanks to this smart board that's been provided to us by RJ Young, and RJ Young is the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. First of all, let's take a look at what's coming up on the show today. We'll have Coach's Checklist, as we'll hear from the coordinators for the University of Alabama, offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien, as well as defensive coordinator Pete Golden, to get their thoughts as they met with the media yesterday getting ready for Monday night's game. Then we'll be catching up with our good friend Eli Gold, the voice of Crimson Tide football, as he'll be talking not just about Alabama and Georgia coming up on Monday, but also for our college football playoff preview show coming up on Saturday night from Indianapolis, as that'll start at 6:30 Central. Coach Saban will be along at 7 o'clock Central, but we'll have more details with Eli coming up in just a bit. Then Greg McElroy, of course, you know him now as an ESPN analyst, or maybe you listen to him in the mornings on WJOX in Birmingham. But he is an Alabama legend. If you go back to the 2009 national championship game, he was the first quarterback for all of Nick Saban's championship teams that he's had at Alabama. And we catch up and talk about that with Greg, as well as mostly just thoughts on this matchup between the Tide and the Bulldogs. And then, speaking of Georgia, once again, it's time to talk with Scott Howard. We just talked to them a few weeks ago, getting ready for the SEC championship game. Now the Bulldogs radio voice will join us on the other booth to get ready and get a full detailed scouting report on Georgia football. Alabama football, again, gearing up for the national championship game against Georgia. Our airtime on the network will be at 4 o'clock across the radio network, as well as the booth cam. Really want to encourage all of you to log on to our Facebook page like you're watching right now. You can keep up with the ball game. You can listen to Eli Gold, John Parker Wilson, Rashad Johnson, Chris Stewart call the game, kind of watch their reactions, especially if there is that championship moment. You'll definitely want to make sure you have the booth cam on to get Eli Gold's final call if Alabama can win the national championship. And if the Tide do win that championship, it would be the 19th that the Crimson Tide have won in school history, also the 7th in the Nick Saban era. So a lot of history on the line when Alabama takes on Georgia. And don't forget as well, our preview show coming up on Saturday, 6 p.m. Central Time from Indianapolis at the Marriott downtown in the Indiana Ballroom. Really looking forward to that event coming up across the network. Also, last night on the network was a lot of fun because the men's basketball team went down to Gainesville, Florida, and picked up a win, 83-70 against the Florida Gators, as the Crimson Tide were down by 3 at halftime and just rolled right past them in the second half. A great road victory for Nate Oates and the Tide. Javon Quinterly led Alabama with 19 points in the game. Certainly a great performance by those two. We saw some consistent scoring as well from Jaden Shackelford, Keon Ellis. Great to see it for Alabama. Still, Crimson Tide on the road coming up on Saturday, as Alabama will be at Missouri at 2:30 p.m. Missouri has been off to a really slow start in conference play due to COVID issues, but still hopeful the game will be played from Columbia, Missouri at 2:30. Our radio coverage will start at 1:30 for that ball game on Saturday. And then on Tuesday, home against Auburn at 8 p.m. And wouldn't you love to see Alabama off to an undefeated start in conference play? Auburn's been in the top 15 pretty much all season long. That's going to be a great matchup at Coleman Coliseum coming up on Tuesday. We're talking a lot about football today, but make sure you keep that game in the back of your mind. Alabama's only chance to host Auburn this year is coming up less than a week from now, coming up on Tuesday at Coleman Coliseum. Speaking of Coleman, if you want to get to Coleman Coliseum, get there tonight for Alabama women's basketball. The Crimson Tide will host Mississippi State at 6 p.m., and Alabama has won the last 3 meetings against Mississippi State, a team that was a power in the Southeastern Conference, but Alabama's trying to continue their winning ways against them. Crimson Tide have loved being at home this season, 9-1, just a loss early in the season to Tulane, but after that, all victories for Christy Curry and the Crimson Tide women's team at home. And also on Sunday at Georgia in Athens, coming up at 2 p.m. Central, so we're looking forward to that matchup against former Alabama player Joni Taylor, known here as Joni Crenshaw, but she is still head coach of the Georgia Lady Bulldogs. And wouldn't it be something if Alabama can close out this weekend getting a win against Georgia, and then maybe the next day getting a win in football against the Bulldogs for a national championship? We would certainly love to see it. Coming up on the show today, again, we will start with the coaches for the University of Alabama. It's typically Coach's Checklist. We hear from Coach Saban, but this week, gearing up for the national championship game, we want you to hear from the coordinators who don't speak that often to the media. Bill O'Brien, the offensive coordinator, and Pete Golden, the defensive coordinator for the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I think you have to do a little bit of both. You have to go back to the drawing board, so to speak. You got to start from scratch. You have to look at the last game. You got to go back and review the whole season, your season, their season. It's a long week. They have a great defense. Almost like a generational defense. They have amazing stats, and they play hard. They play good. They got a lot of great players, great coaches on that side of the ball. And so it's going to be a challenge for us. Guys are really smart. You can move them around. You can do a lot of different things with them. But schematically, I'll probably try to stay above the fray here in this Zoom session. But I think all of our guys are really capable, and they're excited about the opportunity, and we're excited for Monday night. It's been a great experience, Dennis. It's been awesome. We have a lot of great kids to coach. They're hardworking. They love football. Great teammates. The coaching staff here, led by Coach Saban, is one of the best coaching staffs I've ever been a part of, and that says a lot because I've been a part of a lot of good coaching staffs. I've been fortunate that way, and it's just been fun. It's been a lot of fun to coach a guy like Bryce and the rest of the guys on offense, work with the offensive staff. I can't say enough about this program, and I've said it time and time again, how grateful I am to have this opportunity to be here and to try to do my part to help this team win.
Yeah, I don't think it's tough having to play somebody twice. I know everybody talks about that and all that, but if you look at the NFL, you're playing everybody in your division twice. I think the big thing is in any quarterback, what they see is not what they need to get every snap. And I think you're trying to make him make the decision of what coverage it is, what front is it, what pressure it is once he's got the ball in his hands. So I think the key is, in a pre-snap read, he thinks he's getting this look, and then the ball turns over, and now it's a different coverage, or it's a different pressure, or it's a different front. And then now he's got to think. I think, there's no difference in disguises to me on defense from the front, the coverage and all that, than like on offense with motions and shifts and trades. They don't put in new plays every week. They're just getting to them differently. It's a different formation. It's a different shift. They're putting a guy at a different spot. So they're tweaking things, but it's still what they do. It's their bread and butter. So I think, defensively, it's like, how can you keep things the same but make them look different? And that way your guys have carryover. They understand the rules, so if they see something new, they can let the rules apply. So, yeah, absolutely. It's playing the game, making him think. They got a lot of weapons at a lot of different spots that create some matchup issues. They're going to move this tight end around and try to, create the matchups they want with him. They got really good backs that are issue covering out of the backfield. So you got to pick your poison sometime. You're not going to be able to get everybody you want doubled or the person you want on them based on the formation they're in. So, our guys are going to have to cover well and play well. Yeah, obviously I think in any defense, especially this defense, you want your mic, your signal caller that you're kind of basing the defense around, be able to get guys lined up, be able to make all the calls, communicate the adjustments. So Henry having experience in a similar defense when he was at Tennessee, I think kind of put him ahead when he got here. He was familiar with a lot of the terminology, Pruitt using the same stuff that obviously he used when he was here. So I think that piece helped. But really, and I kind of talked about this last week, it's who Henry is. Like, it doesn't matter what he's doing. He's going to be all in, and he's going to be committed to it. He's going to prepare harder than anybody else, and he's going to practice harder than anybody else. And when he does that, people gravitate towards him, and they want to come with him. So, obviously his preparation, his work ethic, his love for football, and then his intelligence. And I think he's got a great personality that people want to gravitate towards, and he pulls them with him. So he's been a huge addition. Not only just from a leadership standpoint and the communication, but he's been very productive as well. So we'd be different without him. Well, yeah, I think the best thing they do is obviously the way that they move them around. They're going to still use them in the run game in the C area, on or off the ball. He's going to be open and split out, and then he's going to bring, Ying back in. So, by putting a certain player on a certain guy all the time, then you're getting back to what y'all just said. You're telling them exactly what you're doing, and they know. So you got to be able to mix it up and, get double them sometimes and bang them, play some zone, get some bigger guys on them at times if, the push-off's an issue. and if the speed becomes a problem, then obviously you got coverages that try to put a DB on them. But, because of the run game, and they're so successful in the run game as well, you can't design everything to take 19 away because they're going to hurt you somewhere else. They got a lot of good players. So it's being multiple. It's having a plan, for wherever he's at, to have things to be able to help you. But, a lot of guys got him covered, and a lot of guys are doubling. He still goes up and makes the play. So it's about contesting it, making them execute, and doing a good job.
Good to hear from Coach Golding as well as Coach O'Brien as the coordinators are helping Coach Saban get this football team ready for what's coming up Monday night, the national championship game against Georgia. Always 2 days before an Alabama football game, we have what is essentially Hey Coach and the Nick Saban show that continues even in the postseason with the SEC championship game and in the Cotton Bowl. And now once again, 2 days before Alabama plays, we will have a preview show that includes the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban. He'll be joining John Parker Wilson, Rashad Johnson, and Eli Gold coming up on Saturday night in Indianapolis. It'll be at the Marriott in downtown Indianapolis, and all the details of that preview show, plus some thoughts on just what it means for Alabama to be back at this point, back playing in a national championship game. We break all of that down with the voice of Crimson Tide football, Eli Gold. To truly get ready for the ball game, we got to have a preview show, and that's coming up on Saturday from Indianapolis. And the host of the show joins us now, the voice of Crimson Tide football, Eli Gold. And Eli, Roll Tide, it's special once again to be talking about a national championship opportunity for the Tide.
It really is, and that's why I'm wearing my New York Jets shirt. You got C.J. Mosley, you got Quinnen Williams, guys who know what championships are all about. So, looking forward to the show on Saturday. Sure am.
I thought you were going to do a Joe Willie Namath guarantee coming up like you did before Super Bowl III.
Well, that's true, but I'm not sitting at a poolside at the Diplomat Hotel in Hollywood, Florida, or at the Fontainebleau. So I guess I could hold up the one and guarantee like Joe did. But I'll tell you, it's something. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and it's remarkable. I've been blessed. This is going to be my 10th national championship broadcast, which has nothing to do with me, I assure you. It is strictly that I've been with the right team at the right time, arguably the greatest era in Bama football history. But it's just remarkable. It really is.
And national championship games, in a lot of ways, they're set up similar to the semifinal, SEC championship, some of the big non-conference games we get early in the year. But there is something different when everything's on the line, I imagine.
Yeah, when you're playing for all the chips, you know that there's something different. But it's very interesting, not that you don't do your same prep, because you do. But, we just prepared for this team 5 weeks ago, whatever it was. So I'm not having to worry about memorizing another group of names and numbers. I know what happened. There are a lot of things a lot of things have changed, but a lot of things transfer over from the SEC title game. So it's maybe been just a tick easier to prepare, but it's still a lot of work. It really is.
In the semifinal, Alabama gets the win against Cincinnati, 27-6 in the Cotton Bowl. What were your main takeaways from that game in Dallas?
Well, the main takeaways were, size beats speed. Alabama had the edge in the trenches. And, that turned out to be one of the major factors of the ball game. I thought the team played well. They did what they had to do. I didn't know how they would hold Cincinnati. There were so many questions there, but, allowing a couple of field goals, that's it, was very, very nice to see.
So the Crimson Tide get the win to move on to the national championship game. And I mentioned we have a preview show coming up on Saturday from Indianapolis, similar to what we had in Dallas a couple of weeks ago. What can you tell us about the show coming up on Saturday night?
Well, we're going to be in the Indiana Ballroom, which is inside the downtown Marriott, which is the team hotel. Now, of course, Indiana at this time of the year is on Eastern time. They don't move their clocks. So as we spring ahead and fall back, it adjusts. But right now they're on Eastern time, if you will. So the show is going to be from 7:30 until 9 local in Indianapolis. If you folks are coming to town, please come and join us from 7:30 until 9. If you're going to be listening here on the network, it'll be 6:30 until 8 o'clock. Myself, John Parker Wilson, Rashad Johnson, and Coach Nick Saban. So we're getting together, get the whole hee-haw gang together, and we'll talk about, playing a team again just 4 or 5 weeks after we played them the last time. But, that's something the coach can speak to very clearly, because obviously in the National Football League, that was something that happens all the time. You play a team a couple of times a year. We've seen that, when we played LSU and the regular season, and again in the national championship game. So this is not without precedent, but that's one of the subjects that we'll talk about with the coach on Saturday.
Of course, you hosting a Hey Coach in the Nick Saban show, you get to talk with Coach Saban each week, and you always have a different media guest for a lot of those shows. But I imagine having a couple of his former players on stage, John Parker Wilson or Rashad Johnson, he had to like that the last game.
He did, and he respects that. He and I get along wonderfully, but let's face it, the next down I play is going to be my first. He's sitting there with guys who he has dealt with intimately. He has a great respect for former players. So yeah, it's wonderful. They can relate to him. They've worked together, and I'm just kind of the traffic cop in a show like that. I keep things going, take care of the business end of things, but I let those guys have at it because, that's what they do. It's two outstanding players and arguably the greatest coach of all time. I don't need to be sticking my nose into that kind of a conversation, so I just let them go.
So once again, Alabama against Georgia for the national championship game. And Eli, you've talked before about some of the calls throughout all these memorable championships that you've been able to broadcast. Are there a couple that really stand out in your mind, especially those final calls once the championship is complete?
Well, one certainly has to be the win over Texas in the Rose Bowl Stadium. That kind of brought everything full circle from the 20s when Alabama went out to the West Coast and played well in the Rose Bowl. And, even the team's fight song, Remember the Rose Bowl, that's very much that was part of Alabama history. So the roses in this grand old stadium were once again crimson. The other one is probably the win over Georgia in overtime. You just open your mouth and, obviously Tua hits Devontae, and after Phil Savage was finished jumping all over the place, I just kind of ticked off the history of what had just happened. That's very memorable. Some of the other calls, the one against Notre Dame in Miami, that, a Crimson Tide has rolled up onto South Beach, bringing with it another national championship. So I always try to work something in like that. And obviously I'm hoping if we win the ball game on Monday to have something along those lines again. I've been toying with some ideas along with Tom Stipe, our producer. We've been toying with some ideas about, a checkered flag or something like that, with obviously Indy being the home of the Indianapolis 500 and a NASCAR race as well. So I might go in that direction, might be something else. You just got to wait and see how the day goes.
And hopefully a win for the Crimson Tide in the national championship game. Well, Eli, we know you're getting ready for everything that's coming up in Indianapolis. Just thank you for taking some time with us here on Crimson Drive. Can't wait for Saturday's preview show, as well as the broadcast coming up on Monday from Indy. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, always a pleasure, Roger. And I look forward to seeing all the fans in Indianapolis or joining us on the network for our broadcast. Thank you.
Great to catch up with Eli. Hope everyone will tune in and also watch on our Facebook page. UA Athletics will have it streaming live as well. The college football playoff preview show from Indianapolis on Saturday night at 7:30 Eastern up there in Indianapolis, 6:30 Central for all of us back here in the Yellowhammer State. As we start to get ready for this matchup between the Crimson Tide and the Bulldogs, we always have either an Alabama legend or somebody from the national media join us on Crimson Drive, and we kind of combine the big picture and Alabama legends for this next interview, because Greg McElroy really checks both boxes as a former Alabama player that won the 2009 national championship and now an analyst on ESPN and also on Jocks in Birmingham. So a perfect time to catch up with the first quarterback to win a national title during the Saban era, one of our good friends here on the network, Greg McElroy. I know it's got to be exciting for you. Another national championship game, and once again, Alabama, Coach Saban right there.
Well, it's funny, we were talking before we started to record, and it's just so funny to me. Like, I can only think of one time, maybe two, that I've been in this industry, and Alabama hasn't been playing in the championship game. So usually by this point of the season, it's like, man, I'm just exhausted. I mean, we all are. We're all tired. You know what I mean? But it's nice to have a second win, knowing that you're going to see your team. So that makes it a lot easier and a lot more worthwhile. So looking forward to it for sure.
What separates the national championship game from all the others? Because Alabama plays in a lot of big venues, NFL stadiums like they'll see in Indianapolis, obviously the SEC championship, the semifinal, but is there something else that separates the national championship game from everything else in your mind?
You know, I mean, I think for Alabama now, it's as much as I would love to say that, well, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. Well, it's the national championship. I think, you know, and I'll say we, because it's a different, I don't care.
Crimson Tide Sports Network, it works.
It's a safe place. I would say that, you know, for me, like I remember treating it very different. You know, I mean, the national championship for us was a 5-week layoff. I think it was 35 or 36 days from the time we played Florida to the time we played Texas. So it was very, very different for us. I would say that in the playoff era, it's, you know, the games are kind of all the same. I mean, it's a little bit tricky, but we felt like there were playoff games scattered throughout our regular season, because back then when there were only 2 teams making the championship, you had to be undefeated or have 1 loss, and undefeated in some cases wasn't good enough. So that was, I think, a little different era. Now you can, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, you can suffer the pain of disappointment, using Coach Saban's terms, and still be in good position to accomplish your ultimate goal. So I feel like the games and just the familiarity of playing in a championship setting will always benefit the team that's been there before. And obviously with Alabama's trips and with as many as they've had under unique circumstances, especially the last couple of years, you know, nobody's going to be more prepared than them.
Crimson Tide against the Georgia Bulldogs. Obviously, we saw this matchup back on December 4th in Atlanta for the SEC championship. Just how do you feel about a rematch so close together, and how much does that change things getting ready for Monday?
You know, I mean, some people have said it's hard to beat a team twice. A lot of people have said that. But when I've actually taken some time to look back and see rematches, it's not really true. You know? I mean, it's usually if you got a team's number, you have a team's number. It's still going to come down to execution, right? I mean, it's simple as that. I mean, Georgia, if they play their A game and Alabama plays their B game, Georgia will win, vice versa, which is kind of like what happened in the SEC championship game. I thought Georgia played a subpar game by their standards. You know, I thought we played amazing, you know, and that, look at the result. Not only was it one-sided, but it was one-sided in a way that people never thought was possible, scoring 40 against a team that's that good on the defensive side of the football. So, you know, it's one of those scenarios where both teams have so much talent. This was, I think, from the very beginning of the season, these were clearly the 2 most gifted teams, the 2 most talented teams. And it's really going to come down to, you know, blocking, tackling, all that other stuff. I hate to use coach speak, but I really believe it. Like, I mean, I think these 2 teams are so dang similar in talent. Usually there's a gap. I don't know if there is a gap in this one. I think there's positions in which there's a gap in our favor, and there might be some positions in which there's a gap in their favor. And it's as simple as that. Got to play well, and the only way to guarantee a victory is to play your A++ game, because I've always felt like if Alabama plays their A++ game, no one's beating them.
If you look back at the SEC championship game, and when from the Georgia perspective, when they were watching the tape, what do you think they wanted to clean up the most from that ball game, and what do you feel like they did clean up against Michigan?
Well, Michigan was a bad matchup for Michigan. I mean, that was a great matchup for Georgia. You're not going to out Georgia. You know, if you're going to say, all right, well, we're going to win on the line of scrimmage, and we're going to do this, and we're going to run the ball, like, you're running into a losing battle, and that's, I think, what happened as Michigan took the field. I mean, the gap in physicality, the gap in athleticism was noticeable. And those are things that you just can't do. I mean, now I think obviously Georgia can be beat, but you can't beat them at their own game. It's like back in the day when Les Miles showed up in Tuscaloosa with Leonard Fournette saying, "We're going to run it down your throat." No, you're not. Like, it's not going to happen. It's just not. It's really not likely, given the success of Alabama's front seven defensively and the inability to consistently run the football. So you're not going to out Bama. You're not going to out Georgia. That's how those teams are built. And Kirby Smart, of course, the architect of that 2015 defense. So I thought it was a difficult matchup for Georgia. Could they have won? Sure, but it was going to require a mistake or two from Georgia. Looking back at what they've cleaned up, I thought they played really slow. I thought they played really tight. They didn't read and react with the same level of intensity against us in the SEC championship game as they did against everybody else. I mean, you watch them play against everybody else, like guys are flying around. It's like, oh my goodness, those guys are blurs on defense. You know, like all of it's like, oh my, it's like how many guys are they playing with on defense? And then against us, it's like they were slow and they made busts and they made mistakes and they got in really bad matchups and they couldn't generate any pressure. I mean, it was almost an unrecognizable performance. Now you have to look at that from two different ways. Some of the things that Alabama was doing, yeah, they were probably thinking a little bit more than usual. They probably forced them to think a little bit more than usual. And as a result, maybe they played just a little bit slow and then they pressed. And then when you press, you play even slower. And then when you play even slower than playing slow, you're in real trouble. So I think that was kind of a culmination of a lot of things in the first performance. And I've said it all week. And I wouldn't even think, most people on Bama's team and people I talked to within the building, they know it's going to require an even better performance. They expect to get Georgia's best, and they know that they did not get Georgia's best in Atlanta a month ago. So that's what championships are made for. You got to beat the best on the biggest stage, and that's what's exciting about the opportunity that lies on Monday night.
One final question, kind of from the Georgia perspective. For quarterback Stetson Bennett, what does he have to do in order to play like we saw him play all throughout the regular season, like we saw him play against Michigan, but how maybe he hasn't performed against Alabama, whether it was in the SEC championship game or last year in Tuscaloosa? What does he have to elevate with his game?
I think the biggest thing, he's got to hit some big plays down the field. I thought he played really nicely against Michigan and took what they gave him. And I loved the plan too. I mean, they got him comfortable. But the biggest thing Stetson Bennett can do is that he can turn negative plays for some quarterbacks into positive plays. And that's, I think, a really, really key attribute to his game is that you have a guy that, for instance, there was a play against Michigan. There was unblocked pressure on the left-hand side coming right at the B gap to his backside. It was like a 3rd and 6. And most guys are going to either not feel that, get sacked. The worst case scenario, sack, fumble, they get it. And then the most unlikely scenario is you turn that play, a really negative play for the offense, into a spin out, reverse field, and then gain enough yards with your feet to convert the first down and to extend the drive. And that's what he did. He did the last option of the options I just gave you. And he does that time and time again. So I think he has to play very instinctively. And there will be a few off schedule plays that he's going to have to make. I think that's the big thing, because Will Anderson's if you think you're going to be able to snap the ball offensively 70 times and cleanly block Will Anderson, I think you're wrong. I think that's highly unlikely. If you win 75%, you should feel like that's a pretty good day. Because I've seen him win like 40% of the pass rush opportunities that he gets. So he's going to win some, there's no doubt. And it's up to Stetson to make sure that the plays that he wins aren't catastrophic for Georgia, meaning a sack, meaning a fumble, meaning a tipped pass that gets intercepted, etc. So I like Stetson a lot. I think he gets a lot of disrespect, and I would expect him to come out with a chip on his shoulder on Monday night. It's just whether or not that chip's going to be enough to overcome the talent advantage that Bryce Young has at quarterback, because this game could very well come down to the quarterback position.
Speaking of off-schedule plays, how good is Bryce Young in moments like that?
Oh my goodness, amazing. That's his best attribute, I mean, a lot of guys are athletic, a lot of guys are accurate, a lot of guys have big arms and can place the football. Like you have to have that. If to be an elite quarterback, to be a championship caliber quarterback, to win a championship in the modern era, like, you have to be able to make all the throws. You have to be able to place the football around defenders. Like, you have to be able to do all those things. I really believe that. But when you look at what Bryce does, is it's the intangibles and the instincts and the nuances within his game that make him really special. And they're not super sexy attributes. I mean, a lot of people aren't going to see him move just a little bit to the right, maybe a yard or two to the right, when there's an unblocked guy coming off the left, and he moves just a yard or two to the right to buy just an extra 1/10 of a second, 2/10 of a second, to allow his receiver just a little bit more time to uncover. He does it time and time again. And that is not something that you see from second-year quarterbacks in college football. Like, yeah, you'll see him from 8th-year pros, and you see him from guys that have been to a couple Pro Bowls, but it's not often that you see a guy that understands how much time he has, how much time the defender or the wide receiver needs to work against the defender, and he'll do whatever it takes within his drop or within his movement in the pocket to be able to buy enough time for those guys to get open. And that's what he's done over and over again. And then some people have said, well, shoot, man, we got to get home. He's not a very big guy. We got to get home. We got to hit him. We got to affect him. Well, he doesn't get hit. I mean, he understands when you bring pressure, if you overload the protection, he knows which guy is unblocked, and he's going to make sure that guy, that's the guy he's paying attention to, and that guy's not going to be the guy that delivers the hit. Now, there might be a guy up front that loses in pass protection that he gets hit on, but the guy that's unblocked is not going to make the play. And that's, I think, really admirable quality for a young guy, to really know where his answers are, and to know everywhere where everybody's at on the field, and where the best place is to distribute the football when a play breaks down.
Certainly hope that he has enough time to be able to make those great decisions. And looking at all the matchups that we could see, is Alabama's offensive line against Georgia's defensive line just the most critical matchup, especially if Georgia plays with more urgency, like you said a moment ago, they should play with on Monday night?
Yeah, I mean, I've always felt like the offensive line versus the defensive line is just so imperative, right? I mean, but if I'm going to look at it, looking back at the most recent matchup between the two, I mean, the biggest matchup, if you're a Georgia fan, is how does your secondary hold up? I mean, that's the biggest thing. Because if you really look at Alabama and the way we attacked it against Cincinnati, I mean, it was a completely different offensive approach. And it was a fairly conservative offensive approach. I would imagine there's going to be a few tricks up Bill O'Brien's sleeve. I mean, it's just that the game was never really at a point in which it was in the balance. So you could be slightly more conservative by just running the football and taking their out of it and controlling the clock and controlling the line of scrimmage. So that there's going to be a couple of tricks from a formation standpoint, a couple of tricks from a motion standpoint, and would expect him to pull out all the stops. No doubt about it. The biggest thing I think for Georgia is to avoid one-on-ones with Jameson Williams. That's imperative, because time and time again in the first matchup, John Mechie and Jameson got favorable matchups. They also blew a couple coverages when Alabama got in bunch formations, and sometimes they build the bunch with emotion. And if they don't do what they need to do with the bunch adjustments, it's a problem. Because right now we've seen not only Jameson Williams make plays, but Slade Bolden has now gotten very comfortable in the bunch sets. You would imagine that Jaleel Billingsley will have some opportunities in the bunch sets as well. So bunch has been a huge, huge part of what Alabama's used to their advantage in the recent weeks. So I don't know if that's their identity from this point forward. Perhaps it is, especially with some of the youth they have at wide receiver in some spots. But Georgia better have an answer for that. And if they don't, you expect a heavy dose of it on Monday night. So the position group that I'm most concerned about if I'm Georgia is the secondary, more so than the defensive line, because the defensive line I fully expect to play better and to create more problems than they did the first time around.
Well, as we get ready for the game on Monday night, Alabama against Georgia to determine a national champion, where are you going to be? Where can fans see and hear you over the next few days as we get ready for the game?
I think you'd be better off. I'd be probably more capable of answering that question about where I be. Starting, I land boots on the ground as of, I believe, Friday night. Might be Friday afternoon. We'll see. Flights are a little tricky right now, as I think most people understand. So We'll be working first thing in the morning on Saturday morning, covering the media days, and go all day Saturday, and then all day Sunday, and all day Monday, and we'll cap it with hopefully another awesome performance by our Crimson Tide in the national championship.
Looking forward to it. Well, Greg, thank you for joining us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network to break down this matchup between the Tide and the Bulldogs, and hoping for all the best coming up on Monday. But just thank you so much for your time and your insights. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, brother.
One of our favorites, Greg McElroy. Great to catch up with him and talk a little bit about his playing career, but also mostly just what he sees from Alabama and Georgia in this matchup. I think really his comments on the quarterbacks, Stetson Bennett of Georgia, Bryce Young of Alabama. You can gain a lot of insight from what Greg had to say there, and look forward to seeing some of his coverage as he'll be on ESPN, some getting ready for the game on Monday night. We know someone that'll be on the Georgia Sports Radio Network will be Scott Howard. He'll be calling the game for the Georgia Bulldogs, and we always have the opposing broadcaster join us for the other booth, and Scott gets to join us for a second time this season. As it turns out, second time in the last 3 games as Alabama and Georgia meet once again. It's time for a really detailed scouting report on Georgia from Scott Howard. Scott, first of all, how was ringing in the new year in South Beach as Georgia got quite a win in the Orange Bowl?
It was good. It was a good performance by Georgia. Personally, I didn't get to the beach. The stadium's miles and miles away from the beach. That's mostly where I was. But the Bulldogs had a terrific performance in the Orange Bowl to get to this national championship game. So everything was good on the new year, and now the focus is set for Monday night.
Let's go back to Atlanta on December 4th. What were your main takeaways from that game? What was the mood of the Georgia program immediately following the SEC championship game?
Well, it was probably a feeling of we've seen this story before, unable to beat Alabama and to get over that hump after such a terrific regular season. I can't speak for what the mood was like in the football office or anything like that, but I would imagine it was for them. It was kind of a back to business. Let's take this situation and learn from it, see where our mistakes were made, try to improve on that, and as a lesson. I'm guessing that's kind of how the coaching staff and the players looked at it. And really, if you look at the way we performed in the Orange Bowl, I think you'd have to agree with that. That was kind of it, because they didn't make a lot of mistakes against Michigan and played more like we had seen Georgia play all season long in the regular season when they went 12-0. But there was probably some dejection among the fan base, certainly unable to win the championship and to beat Alabama. So, but you get another opportunity here, and everybody's kind of on the upswing now, and with some positivity going into this ball game, which you have to. You can't go into it negative and hanging your head and thinking what might happen. You've got to go in with a lot of confidence and a positive attitude that you can win the ball game.
Well, a lot of players for Georgia bounced back against Michigan, but especially your quarterback, Stetson Bennett. Just what did you see from him in Miami as he really had a terrific performance against the Wolverines?
He did. I mean, he was fine. And, he was the offensive MVP. He had a really good ball game. Just saw, what we were just saying. I just saw a lot of confidence with him. Quiet confidence. He's not a big look at me guy. He doesn't bang the drum a lot and draw a lot of attention. He just kind of goes about his business and and tries to block out all the outside noise. And he's heard from detractors, I'm sure, and people complaining about the quarterback situation at Georgia, and it's gone on for weeks now. But all Georgia has done for the most part is continue to win football games with Stetson Bennett. So I don't think you can complain about that, really. But he's a great kid, a great young man, and he plays hard. He wants to win. He studies to win. He puts in the time and the work, and we've seen the results. We've seen the results. Now, that one sticking point is his 2 starts against Alabama. He hasn't played his best games against the Crimson Tide last year or in the SEC championship game, and certainly he's looking to make himself better in that situation. And hopefully the team comes together and they can do that. They can play better in this ball game.
Defensively for Georgia, what looked different against Michigan than maybe what we saw a few weeks ago against Alabama?
Well, it was back to business. It was what we had seen all season long. Just tremendous speed, great pressure on the quarterback. And that was, we had seen that in every game until we got to the SEC championship. Georgia was unable to get pressure on Bryce Young, and that was really a key factor in the outcome of the game. With you give him time with the receivers that Alabama has and other weapons on offense. I mean, they're going to pick you apart. And that's kind of what we saw in the championship game. Didn't see that in the Michigan game. Georgia was able to get pressure on the quarterback. They won the battle on the line of scrimmage. I think they had 4 sacks in the ball game, which was, kind of what we'd seen from this defensive unit all season long. A lot of pressure, great linebacker play, and the secondary, which, going into the season was thought to be, if there was a weak link in the defense, that was it, just because of all the turnover we'd had from the previous year. And so you had a lot of inexperience there, but so you need to be strong up front in the front seven to help out the back end of the defense. And that's the way we'd seen Georgia play defense all year long. And it got back to that in the Orange Bowl game, which we really didn't see in the Alabama game in the SEC championship. So it was just Georgia playing Georgia defense that we've seen all season.
And then also looking at Georgia, any new injuries from the Orange Bowl? How healthy is this Bulldog team getting ready for Monday night?
I don't recall any. I'm trying to think back. I think they're going to be a healthy bunch now with all the other stuff going on. From like physical injuries, I think, what you see is what you get from the Michigan game, from the Orange Bowl game. But as far as any kind of illnesses that may crop up and all that kind of stuff, I don't know. I think Georgia's going to be pretty healthy going in. I mean, they've gotten some guys back. George Pickens is kind of slowly working his way back into getting snaps on the field. He played a little bit in the Orange Bowl. He played a little bit in the championship game, played a little bit against Georgia Tech. So, and he's coming back from a knee injury, which occurred last March. So he's working his way back into it. I'm trying to think offhand of who else might be. If you throw a name at me, I could probably help you out a little bit more. But just off the top of my head, I think everybody's good, to be honest with you. But I'm sure there's probably 1 or 2 that I'm unaware of at this point.
Yeah, we heard Kirby say Brock Bowers a little bit of a shoulder, but he's like, that's a football injury. Kind of everybody's been going through that at some point in the season.
Yes,
and he's good with even unhealthy. He's pretty good.
Yeah, he's been playing banged up. That's right. And the coach wants to kind of encourage his play. I mean, Georgia needs Brock Bowers in this ball game. He's been a tremendous player for Georgia this season. He's a great weapon. He has had that shoulder banged up, but he's been playing through it. I don't know what his pain limitations are or what his, he's pretty good at managing it, I guess, from what it sounds like. So he's, the coach says he's a tough kid. He's a tough young man, and hopefully we're going to see him play on Monday night. I have heard nothing to the contrary.
Well, speaking of Kirby Smart, it was notable in the Michigan game. He was frustrated a little bit how the end of the first half ended, wanted to get some more points going into halftime. Also made sure there was no Gatorade bath, no over-the-top celebration after that game was done. Did you like seeing that demeanor from Kirby, as he really is focused on Monday night and what ultimately matters in national championship?
Yeah, he's all business, and that's good. And he even said that, I think, in the post TV interview. But regardless of the Gatorade bath, I think he always runs away from that if he can get away from it. He's not big into that stuff, and maybe if they win on Monday, maybe he'll relent and just stand there and take it if that's offered up. But Georgia wasn't finished in the Orange Bowl. I mean, that's not where they wanted things to end, so it wasn't like a completion. And for Kirby Smart, it's right on to the next thing. So it's I think his words were, he was asked about that, and I saw the video clip, and he said, "That's not what this is about," and he moves on to the next thing. It's about getting to the championship game, and it's about, playing well there and winning and accomplishing that for this group and the coaching staff. So, I think we're, as Georgia people, we're kind of used to seeing that attitude and that mentality from Kirby. He's a business guy. He's certainly when he's in front of the public. I mean, he's all about work, and he's all about the next accomplishment.
Now it's Alabama and Georgia meeting again. Again, these two teams played just on December 4th, now January 10th, to determine a national champion. And before we let you go, Scott, just curious to get your thoughts on what you feel like Georgia will improve upon the most from the last matchup, what they're going to clean up the most that they noticed back in Atlanta for the championship game that they'll try and fix coming up Monday.
Well, Roger, I think it goes back to what we were just talking about earlier. I think a lot of it has to do defensively and being able to get an edge at the line of scrimmage, being able to get pressure on Bryce Young. I mean, that's part of Georgia's game defensively, is you have to make the other quarterback uncomfortable. You have to get him out of his zone, force him into mistakes. And, that's the one thing that Georgia did not do in the SEC championship game, which they had done all season. And that's really what they have to do again on Monday night in order to have success. So, we saw it come back against Michigan in the Orange Bowl. And I know these guys are working on that and working on a scheme to come up with so that they can get pressure on the quarterback, win those battles up front on the line of scrimmage and be able to force Bryce Young into possibly making some mistakes. He didn't make a lot, but if Georgia's to win the ball game, they're going to have to get pressure on the quarterback.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Just safe travels to Indianapolis. Looking forward to a great game. Thank you again.
Thanks a lot, Roger. I appreciate it.
Really appreciate Scott Howard and his time, as he's got a lot of basketball coming up this week for Georgia, as well as getting ready for the trip to Indianapolis coming up on, well, I don't know when he's exactly going, but he's getting ready for the game coming up on Monday night, just like we are here on the network. And I mentioned busy because of basketball. That can be said for our teams as well here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. It's time to take a look at our schedule coming up here on the network. Starting with later tonight, we'll be busy at Coleman Coliseum with women's basketball against Mississippi State. That is a 6 o'clock start time. We will have the broadcast for you on the radio network, as well as with our courtside cam right back here on the CTSN Facebook page. So right where you're watching this show right now, we'll be right back here coming up a little bit later this evening at 6 o'clock. Coming up on Saturday, we'll have men's basketball at Missouri coming up at 2:30. Our radio coverage will begin at 1:30 across the network. And then later that night, as we previewed earlier in the show with Eli Gold, we will have our college football playoff national championship preview show from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Central. If you're in Indianapolis, that'll start at 7:30 Eastern. Coach Saban will be along from 8 to 9 local time there in Indianapolis. But for all of us listening on the network, 6:30 to 8 p.m. and we'll be streaming live. We'll share it here on our Facebook page, as well as Alabama Athletics. Sunday, if you're already ready for Alabama against Georgia, join us on Sunday for women's basketball on the radio against Georgia at 2 o'clock from Athens, and then the next day to determine it all, to determine the national champion for the 2021 season. Alabama against Georgia from Lucas Oil Stadium, and our coverage will start at 4 o'clock across the network, and of course, right back here on our Facebook page as well, with the booth cam presented by Royal Furniture. It's going to wrap up this very busy edition of Crimson Drive, driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota. Make sure you check them out at TuscaloosaToyota.com, as we feel like we've got you really prepared on the Alabama side of things, the Georgia side of things, and even Greg McElroy giving memories of his playing days, plus a breakdown from his ESPN analysis of these two teams. It's going to be quite a special Monday night from Indianapolis, and we certainly hope that you will join us for that broadcast coming up, as well as some basketball before then. But it's a really special time of Alabama athletics. Another programming note, we will be back with Crimson Drive next Thursday. So a week from today, we'll be back at 2 o'clock for Crimson Drive, driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota, as next Tuesday, win or loss, we'll be making a mad dash from Indianapolis to Coleman Coliseum to get ready for basketball that night against the Auburn Tigers, but should have the courtside cam available for that ball game as well. So again, this is the place to be. The Crimson Tide Sports Network. Just like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter for all the latest on Crimson Tide athletics. Special thanks to all the guests that we've had today, including Eli Gold, Gold, Greg McElroy, and Scott Howard. Thanks as well to our producer, Ethan Carabin, for putting this show together. For everybody with Alabama Athletics and the Crimson Tide Sports Network, this is Roger Hoover saying thank you for watching Crimson Drive, driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota. Now let's enjoy the next few days, what we hope to be a championship start to this year here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. So long, everyone.